Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to the Conflict of Nick channel. I'm your host Nick, and today I've got the next basics explanation video for you guys. This time I'll be going over fighter aircraft. Now, again, it's been a while between the videos. I've been really busy in my life, and I've also been ill again. And it wasn't as bad as the last time, but it just gets in the way. And I'm finally able to get a video out for you guys again. And as you can see, this is the same Kenya game I've been using for most of the videos, and it turned out as a win. My team just wanted me to leave and take the solo win because the whole world was against us, and morale was looking pretty bad, so we took the game down. And actually I have some units that I'll be discussing today that I actually was using as well as my teammates. So why don't we get started by going in the research tab and going all the way past these four, and right next to helicopters there will be fighter aircraft. So the first aircraft we're going to be looking at today is going to be the Air Superiority Fighter. Now, looking at the level 1, we can notice a few things, and a couple things to take into consideration are these things. This is the Western Doctrine again, as I'm playing Kenya, and the best doctrine for this Air Superiority Fighter will be the Western Doctrine. These aircraft in this doctrine get 10% fixed wing aircraft damage and helicopter damage, and they're also getting better research levels. You're going to need an airbase level 1 to build these, and an arms industry level 1. And some of the things to take into consideration is that they're going to require a decent amount of components and electronics to build. Now the research only takes, I believe, 30 in-game minutes, and it can be researched day 1 in the Western Doctrine. Now, what is this good for? Well, in the name, it's meant for air dominance. This plane is meant to ensure you have air superiority to take down enemy aircraft, enemy fighters, enemy helicopters, and keep your troops on the ground safe. At level 1, the Western Doctrine fighter is doing 6.5 to aircraft, 8.5 to helicopters, and some minuscule damage to infantry, armor, and ships. Now, each nation gets one of these, so at the very beginning, so actually it can be very useful, mostly for scouting, because if we can find my fighters here, they're on the ground, but what they have is they actually have like MPAs have sonar range. They actually have a patrol circle larger than this and a little bit of a radar range, so they can detect units and you can see kind of what they're doing and where they are, and they can also be good to hit those early game stacks if you really need to. Now, one thing to take into consideration is that as we go into the higher levels, these things are going to get insanely incredible. At level 1, they were getting 12 speed, and I believe that changes at level 3 or 4. At max level, the F-16 Viper, we are getting about 20 aircraft damage per aircraft. So a 5 stack of these can do 100 damage to planes and like around 90 to helicopters. You're doing not as much, as I said, to infantry, armor, or ships because it's not meant for that. But you're also getting 16 speed, like I said, and you're getting 25 hit points. And the attack range increases to 900 from what I believe your original of 750 was. Yes, that increases at level 5, the fuel optimization measures. So overall, this is something you are going to want to have, especially when you are a nation, not only that is the Western Doctrine, but also that you want to ensure you have air dominance and that you can take down your enemy aircraft to ensure that your skies are safe and that your ground troops are alright, because these will keep the skies clear, and even going up against enemy high-level fighters, you will still take down a great number of their aircraft. A couple things to note is that at a certain level, this fighter actually will have a fixed wing aircraft signature of low, of radar signature, and that means that certain radars won't be able to detect it, so only radar that can detect low signature sizes will actually be able to detect this, as this goes for all high-level fighter aircraft. Something also to note is that I believe at level 4, you can also launch a cruise missile per fighter, so a 5 stack can launch 5 cruise missiles, and that's really lethal actually, because if you catch transports or a ship stack that doesn't have missile defense, you can really screw it up with those missiles. So overall, these are fast, nimble aircraft. They don't require high buildings to produce, and overall they're cost effective until you get to the higher levels, and overall I think they're a really solid unit in the game. If you don't have mobile anti-aircraft, air superiority fighters can do the job just as well, and they are very deadly, especially in the Western Doctrine. Moving on to the next aircraft, there's going to be a lot of these, by the way, today. It is going to be a branch-off aircraft. So this is going to be the first branch-off of the air superiority fighters. There are two branch-offs, this one being the Naval Air Superiority Fighter. So in the name, as you guys can kind of tell, this thing is meant to be used in the naval theater. Now why is that? Because it is meant to be a carrier-based aircraft. That is what the Naval Air Superiority Fighters are meant to have above regular air superiority fighters, is that they can land on aircraft carriers. Now, that would seem appealing, like I said, that would seem appealing if you have an aircraft carrier. If you don't have one, it's really not worth to get these, and if you are doing a naval play, aircraft carriers aren't always going to be what people go for or want to go for that matter. So these are very situational. So these are going to require an airbase level 2 and an arms industry level 1. They're going to require the same amount of resources basically, and they are a branch off from the level 1 version of the air superiority fighter. They're doing 10 aircraft damage, they're doing 8 helicopter damage, and pretty much the same to naval armor and soft. They're getting 22 hit points, the same speed value, and overall are about the same as a regular fighter. Now, one thing to consider is that these are a little bit different because these don't actually get a best doctrine. For every doctrine, these are going to be the same. So you're going to get the F4 Phantom, you're going to get the F14 Tomcat, and you're going to get the Super Tomcats. Now, at max level, these things are very good actually. They'll get 18 aircraft damage per jet, 15 to helicopters, and do somewhat minuscule damage to, like I said, the ground targets and naval targets. They're getting 25 HP each, getting that 16 speed, and they're a very fast aircraft. And really, I think the best job for these planes are going to be ensuring air superiority over a fleet. If you have an enemy using a lot of naval patrol aircrafts that want to hit your submarines or hit your ships or launch cruise missiles, which they have to get close enough to do, you can actually have these fighters ensure that you shoot down those aircraft before they can hit your vessels or launch or get close enough to launch missiles. Overall, I don't really use these things much because rarely do I ever get an aircraft carrier, but when I do, these things aren't really a bad option to have. But really, most of the time, you're going to only need, like I said, you're only going to need airfields, because rarely do you ever not have airfields everywhere. Basically, if you are, like I said, let's say in this position where we are, we have airfields all across the map. We don't have a problem going where we need to go. So really, it's very situational, and I would say use this thing when you want to protect a fleet from enemy aircraft, and that's basically what their use is for. The third aircraft in today's video is going to be, in this case for the Western Doctrine, the F-22 Raptor. Now this is going to be the second branch off and last branch off of the Air Superiority Fighter class, and it is going to be one of the more unique ones. As we've discussed already, like stealth heavy bombers, this is going to be another stealth aircraft. Now, one thing we notice is that you have to have at least level 4 regular air superiority fighters to research this. As you can see by the research lines, if nobody really ever sees these, I don't really pay attention to them that much. But on day 9 for this doctrine, when you get these fighters, not only do you see this arrow goes down, and this arrow branches off into this line, which goes to this aircraft. So you'll be able to see that and see when you can get it. So you're going to need to research these first. Same for the naval fighters. So keep that in mind when you're getting these aircraft. So anyway, the stealth air superiority fighter. This is going to be your most expensive, and I would say one of the less used aircraft in the game. You're going to require, like I said in the last video, for the stealth bombers, a level 5 airbase as for all stealth aircraft, a secret weapons lab, and an arms industry level 1. These are going to cost lots of components, electronics, and some rare materials. And one thing to note is that these do massive damage to aircraft. These do 21 damage to aircraft, so they're packing 105 damage. and doing really insane amounts to helicopters as well, and doing the same to ground and naval as most other aircraft. Some interesting things about these aircraft is that they have more hit points than regular air superiority fighters. They're packing 28. They have the same 16 speed value, so they're very fast and can track down other aircraft like strike fighters that can only go at the speed of 12. They can launch one cruise missile. They can reveal stealth of enemy aircraft, which means you can reveal the stealth of other nations' stealth aircraft that you can't see in the view range. So basically your aircraft, if you have the patrol range and you have an enemy aircraft that is patrolling in that patrol range or goes through it, you'll be able to see it. So it works in that sight range, and that sight range is going to be 25. Now, like I said also as well, this thing is stealth. So you can't see it unless, well, the enemy can't see it for that matter, unless they have a SAM launcher that can detect stealth at max level, or another aircraft that can reveal stealth, or a theater defense that can reveal it, or a radar, etc. Only in the sight range can this thing be seen, and only if it is in combat. Now, one thing you can do, like I said with the bomber, I think, is that you can patrol over enemy territory or neutral territory with this aircraft without declaring war, and they won't know it's there. And when war is not declared, obviously you can get free intel. So these are basically UAVs that can't detect the exact army composition. Same with this fighter, as well as the Naval Air Superiority Fighter. There is no best doctrine for this, and these are getting the same values through every doctrine. And one thing I would note is that these are very expensive, and sometimes, and most of the time, you're going to really only need regular air superiority fighters, because if you're going to want stealth aircraft, you're going to really want them only for that enemy aircraft stealth detection, or you're only going to want stealth strikes or bombers for that hitting capability for infrastructure or ground units. So overall, these things are situational, very expensive like I said, and usually you won't even need them. So that's the F-22 Raptor for the air superiority fighters. The fourth aircraft and the first aircraft in the next fighter class in the fighter area of research is going to be the strike fighter. Now, one thing to note first of all is that I think this is one of the most popular unit classes in the game, and I think it's the most popular fighter out there. Everybody has used these at least once, and they're almost always seen in every game. There's not really a game where I don't see strike fighters at least one time. I always see them early game, mid game, and late game. There's nowhere where I don't see these used, so keep that in mind. Now, one thing that we will go into is the doctrines. So, this thing is the Western Doctrine, and this actually is not the best doctrine for this aircraft. The best doctrine for strike fighters, as many are aware, is the European Doctrine. The European Doctrine is getting 20% more HP than other nations' strike fighters. So while this strike fighter at max level is going to have 25 HP, the other is going to have 30. So a max 5 stack of European strike fighters is going to have 150 HP, while a 5 stack of max Western fighters are going to have 125 HP. So that's a whole fighter's worth basically of hit points that the EU gets at that 5 stack. So, other things to note. These things are going to require a level 2 airbase to build, they're going to require a level 1 arms industry, and they're going to require, like all fighters, components and electronics. You're going to want to make sure you have a decent production of these if you're going to make them, and they do have an upkeep of electronics like most aircraft. Now, a couple unique features about it. So, this, in the description obviously, this is a multi-role fighter. This fighter can do minuscule damage to fixed-wing aircraft at level 1. It is packing 3 damage to helicopters, 2 to ships, 4 to armor, and 4 to soft targets. It is getting a speed value of 12 and has hit points of 20 in the Western Doctrine. And this thing is also getting a combat radius of 750 and gets radar that can detect high units of air, naval, and ground. Now, something that you want to take into consideration, and I don't know if it's noted, is right here it's noted. This, when you have this aircraft patrolling, it will automatically engage hostile units during patrol within a radius of 50, and it shows you a list here of what it will automatically engage. So if you have this strike fighter patrolling over your capital, let's say, and an enemy decides to invade you and start docking and disembarking at that city, if your strike fighters are on patrol, it will actually automatically engage regardless of whether you're on or give it a command. So it will auto-engage soft targets, hard targets, fixed-wing aircraft, surface vessels, which means ships, and rotary-wing aircraft, aka helicopters. So this will engage just about anything on patrol, and so you want to be also careful of that, however, because if you engage the wrong thing automatically, it can really damage these strike fighters. Now, one thing you want to note about these is that these are meant and notoriously famous for doing the same amount of damage to soft and hard targets, and that's why they're really beginner friendly. At max level, we can see this is doing 9 damage to soft and to hard, 6 to aircraft, well, jets at least, 7 to helicopters, and 4 to ships. So overall, this thing is doing decent damage to everything. And that's why it's so beginner friendly in my opinion, because it's just this multi-role fighter that can engage so much and not really have a weak point where it can't do these things. Now, when you face actual experienced players, most of them are going to have mobile anti-aircraft, SAM launchers, and ASF, air superiority fighters. So these things aren't always just going to be immortal or the best in every situation. They're going to be good, but you have to be careful when using them and strategic when you're using them. You can't just send them in and they'll get shot down, because that's not what you want to do. Now, these can launch a cruise missile like the air superiority fighters at high level, and they're also getting like the air superiority fighters, a combat radius upgrade of 900. Now, to take into consideration, so overall, these things are great multi-role aircraft, great for dealing with just about anything. And in this game, since South Africa is a European doctrine, if I can find his jets, he had a lot of them, and they just did so well because they had that tanky hit point base, and they could just do equal damage amounts to soft and armored, and it was deadly when we had about 4 or 5 wings of them. Just dealing with enemies and killing them left and right. So overall, this is going to be a great aircraft, not for every situation, but it's going to be very user friendly and very easy to use. But don't just send this in every time. Get intel, see what your enemies are doing, and overall use these effectively, and if you do that, you will have a great time. These fighters are going to be great for big nations such as Russia, because they're fast, they have a fast response time, and can deal with hard and soft targets evenly, so there's no really weakness they have there with ground strikes. The next branch off strike fighter we're going to have is very similar to the Naval Air Superiority Fighter. It's going to be the Naval Strike Fighter. Now, in this case, it's going to be the A6 Intruder. This has no best doctrine, like I mentioned with the other branch offs, and this is going to be not only a fighter that can do even damage to hard and soft, but also the same to ships. And that's the unique ability of the Naval Strike Fighter, not just because of its carrier-based potential, but also because of the damage it can do to ships. So this thing at level 1 is packing around the same, pretty much about as a low level, like level 3 or 2 strike fighter. And overall, it's not that bad. And it's getting that radar, it's getting that decent combat radius and that speed, and it's costing you about the same as any other fighter would with those components and electronics. This thing is going to require an airbase level 3 and an arms industry level 1. Now at max level, you're going to get the F-18 Super Hornet, and this thing, you'll notice, does the same amount of stuff to basically gets identical stats as a regular strike fighter. However, you see the ship damage is increased from 4 to 9, and that can be really good in some situations, because not only are you able to do 45 damage to those ground targets, but 45 to ships. So if there is a 5 stack of destroyers that an enemy is using with no anti-air protection, these will be good against things like that. So you have ground strike potential, and you also have naval strike potential. So this is going to be good for nations that are potentially landlocked, or also if you have a huge navy and you want to have that flexibility to have strikes on enemy ships or have strikes on land, so you can commence landings for landing forces in your coalition or for you on enemy territory. And overall, these are actually, I think, one of the better fighters to go for a carrier strike group. It just depends on what you want to do with them. So they're getting 25 hit points, and like I said, they're getting basically identical stats as regular strike fighters. They're getting that cruise missile, and again, very deadly with the cruise missile hard points here for these aircraft, because it just makes them so much more lethal. If people have them, it can launch them at transports, at ships, at ground targets, etc., etc. It's going to get the 900 combat radius, and it's also going to have a radar signature of low, as all high-level fixed-wing aircraft do. Moving on to the sixth aircraft in the fighter research is going to be the F-35 Lightning II, or the Stealth Strike Fighter. Now, this fighter, as well as the F-22 Raptor, is not getting a best doctrine. This thing is going to be a monster, and this is one of my favorite stealth aircraft to go for because you can see the monstrous stats it gets. So, like other stealth aircraft, it is going to require an airbase level 5, a secret weapons lab level 1, and an arms industry level 1. It's going to require heavy components, electronics, and some rare materials. This thing is going to be stealth, so it will not be visible unless it is engaged in combat. It has a combat radius of 900 and can launch a cruise missile. Now, this thing is doing insane amounts of damage to soft targets and to hard targets, decent amounts to fixed wing at 7, 8.5 to helicopters, and 5 to ships, but that monstrous 11 damage to hard and soft is just crazy. A 5 stack of these can do 55, and it is just amazing when your enemy doesn't have that stealth detection or good anti-aircraft. And even with regular ASF actually can't see stealth. Only stealth air superiority fighters can. And so if you get that strike off and they don't have air superiority fighters that can see you or good AA, you're basically going to get it for free. Now, like air superiority stealth fighters, you're going to have a hit point base of 28, but you're also going to be slower because strike fighters cap out at 12. This is going to be a great aircraft for hitting heavy on your enemy ground targets, and it's also going to be that multi-role fighter that can engage enemy helicopters, enemy jets, enemy ships, but it's mainly meant for hitting those ground targets and hitting them hard. This is, I think, the best stealth aircraft in the game, in my opinion, because I absolutely love to use them. They are insane with that 11 damage. 2 more than any regular stealth strike fighter, and overall these are just great, and I adore them. And overall, these are a really good unit to use. They're just really expensive, and you want to be careful when using them. Scout your enemy out, see if they have stealth detection, but these are great to use if you know how to use them. Now, our last aircraft for the day is going to be the most unique one in my opinion. Unlike the other fighters we went over, it is going to be the UAV, or the Unmanned Aerial Vehicle. Now, this aircraft is so unique because of its role, unlike any other aircraft in the game, in my opinion. So the UAV is going to be mainly for scouting. As you can see, this thing gets no attack damage whatsoever to anything at level 1. There is no best doctrine for this unit, and it requires a level 1 airbase, a level 1 arms industry, and it requires supplies and some electronics. Now, the unique features of this are very useful actually. If somebody is using these right, these will be very good for gathering intel on your neutral enemies or your enemies. These are going to reveal stealth of ground units, which means you can reveal special forces or other stealth units, and you can scout the exact composition of enemy armies. You can see exactly what they're using, where they're moving them, and overall that will provide you some very good intel on your enemies and neutral people near you. It has a combat radius of 750, which is the base for aircraft that don't have the 900 range upgrade yet, and it has a speed value of 5. It is going to be super slow, so it's not going to get there as fast as regular aircraft. It has hit points of 2. This thing is fragile like a paper plane. It has 50 sight range, and really that is going to do great in the scouting role because it has that wide sight range that you can see things with. But like I said, you're going to want to be very careful with these 2 hit points because your enemies or an enemy can just shoot it down in one shot with basically anything. Now, important note, as even stated in the game, important, this unit doesn't declare when penetrating foreign airspace. So this means you can patrol over somebody's territory and it won't declare war, just like stealth aircraft. And speaking of stealth, once we get to max level, this thing has some interesting and very useful buffs. This thing is now going to get some very unique features, and as you can see, we have the damage tab again. At max level, this thing is doing 6.5 to hard targets and 4 to infantry. However, you really never want to use these things in direct engagements because, like I said, it is very fragile. At max level, it's only got 5 hit points, it's got a speed value of 6, so it's easy to hunt down, and if you engage something, you're probably going to die if it has basically any enemy aircraft damage or anti-aircraft damage in the stack. Now, this thing gets some very good abilities. This is going to be a stealth unit when it is max level in this UAV here. It is going to be a stealth unit, which means you can't see it unless you have stealth detection, which means most of your enemies are going to be very vulnerable and not know where this thing is. This is going to be a carrier-based aircraft, which means carriers can actually launch these and you can station them on carriers. It's going to have a combat radius of 3,000, which is huge. That's going to mean you can scout from across oceans if you wanted to. You're going to have the scout ability, the reveal stealth, and you can launch a cruise missile. And this hardpoint makes these especially deadly because when your enemies can't see you, and when you're gathering that intel along as when you have the ability to inflict massive damage, if you scout a bunch of enemy aircraft on the ground, you can have a preemptive strike of a, like let's say a nuclear cruise missile and destroy all those aircraft or destroy an airfield that you want gone. This thing is going to be extremely useful for that and gathering intel. So this is not going to be your combat-based aircraft. You're going to use this to know exactly what your enemies are doing, where things are moving, what their compositions are, and you can even, like I said, use those strategic preemptive strikes with those missiles. And that's one of the most useful things of most aircraft, in my opinion, is that they can launch those cruise missiles, because that's one of the most lethal weapons in the game. This has no best doctrine, like I said, and it's very cheap, and it's very good for most players because they're not hard to use and they give you very good intel. Only thing is, if you violate people's airspace when they don't have stealth, they're really not going to be happy with you, so I would not just willy-nilly send them everywhere, but send them to places that you are thinking of invading, places you want to go. Make sure to use diplomacy so people don't get mad at you and invade you all at once. Use diplomacy strategically and single out your targets so that using those UAVs does not in fact get you punished, but instead benefits you. So guys, I hope you're enjoying the series. I know this might have been a longer one today, and there was a lot of time between the videos, but I'm trying my very best to get them out, and I'm super glad that people are liking these series. I'm super surprised that the series and these videos are getting the amount of views as it is, and that makes me super happy. I'm so glad you guys support me in the channel. It's just absolutely amazing. Like, subscribe if you like the channel and the series or want to see more. It always motivates me to see that thing go up, and I'm so happy that you all are sticking with me. Guys, leave a comment if you have a question, if you want to say hi, if you have something that I missed, or if you just have something to say. You can write it down there and I'll check every single one. So guys, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later.